In a deserted corner where no one looked, a strange object exploded from beneath the ground. It released a beam of light that circled the city and flew directly into a house halfway around the world. The protagonist was sitting at a desk sketching something, with the news reporting the recent explosion playing in his ear. According to legend, in ancient times, when demons and spirits threatened to destroy the world, the hero of the Supreme Imperial Formation sealed the demons in another dimension guarded by two gods, returning peace to the three realms, but the demons still secretly wanted to invade. With that, the righteous protagonist set out to save the world. This was the plot of the protagonist's story, the manuscript he had just completed and sent to the publisher. Suddenly, a whirlwind appeared in the windless room, creating a beam of light in the space, then directly sucking him in. The protagonist followed it into another world. In his strange attire, the protagonist immediately realized he had been transported to a different dimension. He looked at the blood-red sun, along with the ground shaking as tree trunks sprouted up, and rather than feeling afraid, he raised his arms and laughed. This action successfully attracted the attention of monsters. One directly ran at him, causing him to feel dizzy. The protagonist thought that being the main character would protect him, but the monster showed no respect. Suddenly, a blue light descended from the sky, surrounding the half-human, half-beast monster. A mysterious figure appeared and defeated the opponent in half a second, leaving the protagonist astonished. Not only that, the area was full of monsters that hadn't been eliminated, forcing the mysterious person who had just appeared to busy themselves fighting again. The protagonist stroked his chin, thinking about what he should do, then decided to run. According to tropes, there were no tutorials for newcomers. One should never be rash, and staying alive was more important. Then he noticed a light chasing him, which transformed into a sword that fit perfectly into his hand. Could this be the invincible treasure sword? He held it up, examining it, once again attracting the attention of monsters. The protagonist ran for his life, not yet knowing how to wield the sword before being forced onto the battlefield. The blue-haired person also chased after and attacked, clearly sensing that the protagonist was no ordinary person when, while holding the wind demon sword, he still easily avoided their attacks. The protagonist climbed a tree, swinging the sword wildly, then unexpectedly fell, landing directly on a monster's head. The masterless sword chased after the protagonist, creating a pulse that made a whole area of the sky flash with light. Opening his eyes again, the protagonist was no longer on the blood-red battlefield. He was lying awkwardly on a bench at a bus stop like a homeless beggar, being woken up by a street sweeper when the sun had already reached halfway up his buttocks. He rubbed his eyes several times, realizing it was all just a dream, no dimensional travel or time travel at all. Feeling disappointed, behind him, the protagonist saw a dog carrying something golden on its head, like a sacred object not belonging to the human world. He jumped up excitedly, demanding that the other party sign a contract and negotiate an exchange to save the Earth. The street sweeper standing not far away, seeing this scene, quickly took a photo to bring home as evidence to show his grandchildren. The protagonist brought the golden thing home. He took out a bag of food he had bought for stray cats last month and fed it. Not stopping there, the protagonist even brought out a potted plant for the little one to relieve itself. The golden object angrily kicked everything over. It said it was Kiri, the divine beast guardian, not a pet. Thinking the protagonist was probably stupid, it insisted that divine beasts should look like this. The protagonist took out a comic book to show Kiri images of majestic divine beasts inside. Kiri contemptuously tossed it aside, saying that while most of it was fiction, the demons and their wind demon subordinates had indeed been sealed in another dimension by the Supreme Imperial Formation. And it was Kiri, the guardian divine beast, who had been protecting the three realms for tens of thousands of years. Last night, if Kiri hadn't given him the divine trample sword, how could he have survived and made it out? Unfortunately, lately, the seal had been weakening, and the situation of wind demons passing through spatial rifts to damage the three realms was becoming increasingly frequent. Speaking of rifts, they were things born due to the unstable energy between the three realms and the other dimension. But Kiri assured him that it was very safe inside. After all, he was a person with a heavenly mandate, able to see ghosts and spiritual beasts that ordinary people couldn't detect, and had the invincible power to save the world. Hearing the 4 words, "save the world," his eyes lit up brightly, saying to leave it to him, the chosen one, to solve it. When the protagonist asked about how to deal with rifts caused by the uneven miasma on both sides, Kiri hesitated and didn't answer. At this moment, his phone rang. The protagonist's name was finally revealed. He was Yinfen Lin, someone who hadn't paid his rent and was being scolded by his landlord. After ensuring that he would keep Kiri's secret, he went out to make money. Yinfen had no idea that his life had started counting down from this point. A set of conditions was drawn up. giving readers only 5 minutes to agree, but he knew nothing about it. Young Master Liu Heng, from the Liu family, who had recently been rumored online to be the investor in the exploded relic site, was sitting in his supercar, speeding on his way there to check for traces. It turned out he was also one of the Wind Demon Slayers. After learning that the person who had stolen his prey yesterday was a newcomer, he was very angry. Meanwhile, Yinfen was riding a public electric bike to work when he encountered another spiritual beast, causing him to brake suddenly without noticing Kiri on his head. It flew off, hitting the ground face first, and angrily turned back to scold him. It turned out that there were quite a few spiritual beasts in the area where Yinfen lived, but unlike his all-powerful divine beast, they were called bubbles and were less sentient. The protagonist had no idea that he was exploding across forums for people who had crossed dimensions, thanks to killing a boss the day before with the name Sword Knight. Walking down the street, he accidentally caught a girl who almost fell, someone who was also in the time travel group. Suddenly, Yinfen saw 2 divine beasts crossing the road and immediately let go of the girl in his arms, rushing into the middle of the road to save the 2 little ones, wasting all his effort cutting in front of cars only to realize they couldn't be harmed by objects in this world. The passers-by would have been wasting their breath if they didn't curse at him. After that, he continued to be circulated in the group, but not with the cool title of Sword Knight, rather as a fool who didn't read the rules of the 3 realms, looking like he had mental problems. Shortly after, Mingshan Mental Hospital sent a doctor to resolve the situation. People in the group had decided not to pay attention until a notification popped up, and Yinfen's image caught their eyes. Unbelievably, he was indeed the Sword Knight that everyone had been buzzing about. Yinfen was brought to the authorities for judgment. According to the second rule for those with a heavenly mandate, they must not harm ordinary people. The third rule, do not reveal your identity to ordinary people. The 11th rule, do not cause chaos for other reasons or force major causes. Not even half a day into being a person with a heavenly mandate, he had violated nearly half the rulebook. Yinfen Lin had to take out his phone to check the illegally installed app on his device, having no knowledge of the rules. Given that it was his first offense, the authorities only issued a warning and a fine. When the officials looked up his profile and discovered that Kiri was his guardian divine beast, they were wide-eyed with surprise. As for Kiri, it also trembled while awaiting a suspended sentence. The group of officials looked at each other and then held back their laughter as they left. First time meeting, not knowing what to say, just do your best. After saying this, the 3 people left, and once out of sight, they couldn't help but laugh loudly, the sound reaching the end of the corridor. He had a bubble named Guardian Divine Beast Kiri, a name so funny it could kill. Yinfen heard it all but wasn't angry, instead wanting to tease Kiri. See? They also said you look exactly like a bubble. Kiri angrily jumped up and grabbed his collar, saying it had told him not to reveal its identity. After that, he was kicked out, standing in front of a blue light in the space, and was immediately pulled in, finding himself in an ancient setting like the 1700s. But this was absolutely not a time travel game, but a mission to save the 3 realms. Yinfen noticed an area that had appeared in books, the southern Jambudvipa realm. Legend had it that in ancient times, the 3 realms and 4 continents, eastern Shangshen, southern Jambudvipa, western New Xia, and northern Julu and Mingshan City were all part of the southern Jambudvipa realm. As a comic book author, these were considered basic knowledge. Yinfen walked around mischievously, looking like someone with an illness, being looked at sideways by everyone, until they learned he was the knight who had eliminated the boss from the rift, and then they crowded around him. Making a name for himself on his first day here was quite extraordinary. Yinfen stood under the Destiny Jade, said to be the root of the heavenly mandated ones, determining the fighting power of those with a heavenly mandate. This screen was to test the strength of one's Destiny Jade. If your Destiny Jade was too weak to pass, you absolutely shouldn't foolishly enter the time rift and die for nothing. That was what the pink-haired girl said. She had preceded Yinfen by several years in saving the 3 realms. She continued, those who pass through the screen will see the strength of their Destiny Jade emit 5 extreme lights: gold, purple, blue, and green. The best person to reach the peak power of the golden perfection screen to date is only Bone Spirit, who achieved that feat. Yinfen eagerly asked to test his strength, but was stopped by Kiri. Jiru only let go when he heard others provoking him. Yinfen, in a fit of hot-bloodedness, jumped onto the screen, but because his strength was still weak, he couldn't withstand the force and directly smashed his face into the stone tablet, then slid down. Thinking it was something grand, it turned out to be just a low-level Destiny Jade. The crowd laughed as if they couldn't laugh enough, and their interest in watching the show began to wane. Yinfen believed he was chosen by heaven, so he must not have discovered all his abilities yet. He took out his sword and wildly waved it in the air. Somehow, the beam shooting from the sword caused a crack to appear in the golden perfection screen, nearly making it explode. Right after that, a person named Tadan jumped onto the platform, face to face with Yinfen. Knowing he had caused trouble, he put down his sword, about to negotiate when the other party grabbed his shoulder in emotion. It had been a very long time since old Tadan had seen someone who could destroy the screen. He didn't notice a black smoke that had sneakily entered the sword he had dropped. Tadan stepped forward to pick up his sword, and without waiting for Yinfen's consent, immediately put him in the monster-slaying squad. A rare treasure sword like this should be bathed in the blood of those beast men, not wasting such a precious item. He gave him a card, officially making him a Wind Demon Slayer. Elsewhere, at the Mingxian Museum, eerie artifacts were shaking. An ancient sword mysteriously disappeared, and there was an explosion of unknown cause. Outside, Yinfen was rummaging through trash cans, having heard people say that something evil had been excavated from the ancient city ruins, so he went through garbage without hesitation. Slaying wind demons could wait. Anything not yet accomplished was surely heaven's arrangement. He had also heard that the ruins of Mingxian University had been excavated 3 months ago, but strange occurrences had only been reported a month ago. At that time, he seemed to have picked up an ancient sword from the ground, and coincidentally, 2 archaeological sites at Mingxian had also lost something similar. After this treasure sword disappeared, the exhibited artifacts stopped shaking. Yinfen could guess the answer. According to his deduction, the 2 events at Mingxian University and the missing sword were related. Yinfen had no idea that the explosion the other day was caused by the fist-sized thing walking beside him. Kiri wiped the sweat that was flowing like a stream. Fortunately, that guy could only deduce that much. Yinfen was determined to find the sword to expose everything to light. Meanwhile, the sword they were looking for was being restored. After the 2 broken halves were put back together, a pulse of energy shot out in all 4 directions, causing Yinfen to transform on the spot. The time rift appeared suspiciously and without basis. Although surprised, Yinfen couldn't forget his mission. He had to quickly defeat the monsters hiding within the range of the crack. He caught a furtive glance from behind a bush, which turned out to be just a tiny crab put it in a pot with a lid, and it surely couldn't escape. Yinfen thought this was ridiculous, like a joke. But the next moment, the crab he had underestimated grew 10,000 times larger, becoming a size that Yinfen had to struggle to fight. At the crucial moment, a slashing force cut across, severing half of the monster's claw. Yinfen thought it was due to his talent and being chosen by heaven, so he regained courage and chased after the monster, demanding its life. Kiri was also surprised. Even it didn't know its treasure sword was so powerful. The crab seemed possessed by something, turning back to counterattack unexpectedly. Yinfen lay in a heap on the ground, unable to react to this extreme turnaround. When he was nestled between the crab's claws, seemingly about to meet his maker, some girl with a cool motorcycle arrived, performing a scene of beauty saving the hero. Kiri, sitting idle, also got hit and flew with the wind, bumping its head against a tree, causing a lump to form. If it weren't for Kiri's divine power being damaged, requiring only the sacrifice of spirit formations to repair the seal, Yinfen would have been dealt with long ago, not waiting for those damned wind demons. Kiri reflected on their first meeting, how it had intentionally pulled him into the rift, given him the treasure sword, and blown black energy into the sword on the platform. Kiri was about to die of anger. As a guardian divine beast, by what right did it have to go with someone who couldn't accomplish anything in life like this? Yinfen suddenly came out and told Kiri that he no longer wanted to kill wind demons to protect the 3 realms. After all his bluster, it boiled down to being afraid of death. Did he think he would have lost his life there? No more, heaven's choice or not. Nothing was more precious than his life. If heaven was so capable, it should give him 1 billion. Otherwise, restore that sword. Joking but serious, somehow the sword was truly mended like new. Kiri swore on its honor that it had no hand in this matter. Its powers weren't that strong. Kiri recalled the blue light from earlier. If that wasn't a green ray, what was it? Meanwhile, at the Lu family, young Master Lu Heng also received news that the sword's energy was more terrifying than imagined. His grandfather's guess wasn't wrong. The ancient city of Jianan collapsing into the earth in just one night might not be a fabrication. Under the ruins, there was likely a world-shaking secret being hidden. Strangely, the fallen sword had disappeared, and its whereabouts remained unknown. Kiri told Yinfen about how frightening restoring the treasure sword was. Trample Lu was spiritual energy, and no ordinary person could restore Trample Lu. Yinfen guessed that heaven had favored him and fixed it right or wrong. It didn't matter. What mattered was belief. Although the suspect still hadn't been identified, through this incident, Yinfen had regained his faith in life, picked up his sword, and was determined to fight to the end. As for Lu, he had stopped excavating the ruins and focused on finding the cause of the explosion. At home, there was also a young master who had been confined by the old master for secretly conducting experiments that caused chaos at Mingxin University. Yinfen had unintentionally become a topic of discussion in the group again. People couldn't believe that Bone Spirit had joined forces with the Knight to eliminate monsters yesterday. No wonder they were so strong. Kiri was completing the final process of its digestive system, secretly covering it with dirt to hide it from Yinfen, and accidentally on purpose, that pile of dirt fell and hit the Lu family's young master right in the face. The person who was just about to move in today, and Butler Meng had to help the young master dry his hair to restore his clean and tidy appearance. He asked him why, among so many targets, he only chose the new knight to collaborate with. Lu Heng replied that he felt this person was very strong, but also very weak and short, hard to grasp. They should try killing some wind demons together to assess his strength. To form a long-term partnership with a young master, strength alone wasn't enough. Character also counted. Compared to some groundless rumors, he preferred to trust what he saw. The doorbell rang. It was Yinfen, who wanted to greet his neighbors. The scene inside compared to the dust-covered corridor outside was like two different worlds. He still remembered that Lu Heng was the person who had helped him drive away the goat-headed monster. With that, Yinfen pushed the potted plant containing Kiri's premium product into Lu Heng's hands as a housewarming gift. Lu Heng looked at it contemptuously with half an eye, and the butler had to quickly come to help his young master escape the dangerous situation. Yinfen still patted the other's shoulder repeatedly as if they had been close friends for 20 years. Yinfen couldn't stand sitting still, his hands and feet touching everything in the room, and he even managed to open a hidden mechanism, revealing sparkling crystals. Lu Heng said these things were collected from various merchant associations on southern Jambudvipa Street, not hard to find. When Yinfen was about to touch something else, Lu Heng stopped him. He directly took out a 3-star wind demon spirit core for him to see. Every time a wind demon was killed, one of these would drop. That day, after eliminating the goat-headed demon, Yinfen had run off, so he had kept it. Now he was returning it to its owner. The old butler, afraid he would waste it, told Yinfen that the price of one of these could buy a whole set of enhancement stones like Lu Heng's. Good brothers share good fortune. Eliminating the goat-headed monster also had Lu Heng's contribution, so they should split it. Despite Lu Heng's refusal, Yinfen insisted on dragging him away. They entered the 3 realms together, and the earth-shattering event directly caused everyone to freeze. Lu Heng, known as Knight Marquis, was holding someone else's hand in the middle of the road. This was news that could shock a cow to death. The cold and proud Knight Marquis of the entire southern Jambudvipa region had never looked at anyone except Bone Spirit. Yet today he was acting like this. There must be some hidden story. Yinfen pulled Lu Heng into Old Ma's shop to sell the spirit pearl. Initially, the shopkeeper offered 350, and seeing Yinfen shake his head, Lu Heng thought this fool knew the price, only to see him directly lower it to 200. Lu Heng could no longer speak and had to step in to save the situation. The day before, Old Ma had bought a 2-star spirit core for 600 gold, yet was offering only 350 for a first-class item. Yinfen was stunned to realize he had been deceived. Profiting from a customer who wasn't as smart as others was the shop's problem. Yinfen nodded in agreement, and it took half a minute before he realized that the less intelligent customer being referred to was himself. It was no different from being punched in the face and then standing there praising the excellent martial arts. But thanks to Lu Heng, he wasn't cheated. Since Lu Heng refused to accept money, Yinfen wanted to treat him to a hearty meal. The restaurant owner was a tiger with a fierce appearance, but a fragile soul. Lu Heng still refused to accept anything from Yinfen. Moreover, seeing that eating style made him feel not hungry at all, so Yinfen ate both bowls of noodles himself. Suddenly, they heard a commotion. The restaurant owner was being harassed by a customer. After knocking over a bowl of noodles, the customer was also about to hit the owner's divine beast. Yinfen had no intention of standing by watching an innocent person being bullied, so he stepped up to help. Here, all beings were equal. Seeing this behavior, Lu Heng's eyes slightly moved, as if unconsciously clearing a position in his heart to place this person. But then realizing his gaze was too bold, he looked away. The troublemaker, after realizing that the silent but angry person was Knight Marquis, quickly tucked his tail between his legs, using the best strategy to protect his life by fleeing as fast as possible. Yinfen, not hearing any apology, was angry but could only curse after him. The restaurant owner bowed to thank him for his righteousness. Yinfen was surprised that beast demons could speak because the owner explained that he was a person with a heavenly mandate. Surprisingly, even animals were chosen by heaven. The little bubble spirits, also called Bao Bao, seeing that there was no more danger, approached Lu Heng. They were dirty, looked a bit filthy, and somewhat pitiful. Lu Heng decided to leave. The Lu family had a strong presence within 3 miles in all directions. In the 3 realms, there was also a place called the Langthang Charity Fund built by the Lu family. And in the real world, there was also the Global Food Fund organized by the Lu family. Kiri felt that someone willing to wander day and night with a fool from their house certainly couldn't be a decent type of person. Suddenly, a time rift appeared, and Yinfen and Lu Hang quickly went to where there was trouble and transformed to fight. Before the two of them was a Qilin Wind demon with the special talent of dodging and sneak attacks. Qilin created a whirlwind, almost sweeping Kiri into it. Fortunately, Lu Hang reacted in time, standing in front to shield it, saving its life. In the end, Kiri was still pulled in, smashing straight into Qilin. The monster had stopped creating the storm, and Kiri fell down looking extremely pitiful. Yinfen was about to charge forward with his sword, but Lu Hang stopped him. They needed a proper battle plan. Qilin was agile, and Lu Hang instructed Yinfen to use the sweeping army technique to observe the enemy first. But he didn't even know what that was. It was in vain that Lu had trusted him so much. He didn't even know the simple operations. Qilin attacked continuously, losing one tactic only to present another. Lu Hang again asked Yinfen to attack from front to back, while he would focus on its waist. Before he finished speaking, Yinfen had already charged forward. Oh well, they would have to adapt to the situation. Both of them rushed in at the same time, but Qilin used the earth burrowing technique. It would emerge from the ground in any direction when they weren't paying attention. The ground suddenly split, and indeed, something had broken through the earth and was charging toward Yinfen. At least he knew how to use a sword. Though he didn't get hit, he pushed all that water straight onto Lu Hang's head. He was too busy watching out for Yinfen to remember to dodge. There was another disturbance under Yinfen's feet. Lu Hang exerted all his internal strength to rush to his side. But because he wasn't paying attention, Yinfen, while attacking, had also sent him flying. He reached out to grab the hem of his clothes, but only made things worse. Lu Hang impatiently closed his eyes, trying to suppress the anger rising in his throat. Qilin had emerged from the ground and was standing on a tree. Yinfen, wanting to make amends, told him to leave this to him. What was happening? That line should have come from Lu Hang instead. He became even angrier. He had disregarded danger to save him, yet he was mocking him. Yinfen didn't understand what he had said wrong. He was clearly concerned about the other person. Qilin, not caring about the couple's argument, directly rushed at them, but was defeated by Yinfen in 2 moves. Lu Hang acknowledged his fighting ability, hoping that in the future, when they became teammates, Yinfen would train his defensive skills more. Hearing the word teammates, his eyes lit up, thinking the other person wanted to follow him and support his fight. He patted his shoulder, saying that he just needed to train a bit harder to increase his strength. Lu Hang's blood boiled. He would show him what the young master's anger was like. Qilin had just sat up, not yet able to counterattack, when it was seized by Lu Hang's power. The whole city shook, and Yinfen immediately retracted his earlier words. Lu Hang was the best. Lu Hang gave Yinfen a book with some techniques he could practice in his spare time. Kiri was dragged along to practice day and night, thinking it was about to die. It told him he didn't need to practice these mundane techniques because Yinfen was the chosen one. He knew that, but now he had a partner and needed to learn something beyond instinctual moves to be able to cooperate and protect others. The persistent scriptwriter called, and what seemed like good news turned out to be a scolding. If he couldn't submit a decent draft by noon tomorrow, he should be prepared to pack up and leave. Yinfen suddenly remembered the wind demons and then had an idea. He grabbed his bag and ran home. Although Lu Hang had acknowledged Yinfen's abilities, he was still hesitant about teaming up. A brave but thoughtless person who kept putting himself in danger yet insisted on being the team leader. The butler said to leave this matter to him. Suddenly, his phone notified him of a message, and when he opened it, Lu Hang was so angry that he threw his phone directly into the fish tank. It turned out that Yinfen, not content with his lot, had redrawn the story of the two of them and sent it to the publisher. Not only that, but the background image was of Lu Hang wagging his tail like a dog for him. But on the bright side, his story was updated, and the number of followers was increasing continuously. Yinfen was so happy that he woke up in the middle of the night to dance. So he boldly included Bone's spirit in the story as well. He was speeding down the road delivering packages, laughing and singing, when he suddenly heard someone calling for help in a small alley. Looking in, he saw a young man bullying a small girl. Yinfen, not caring about the consequences, rushed in and kicked the opponent hard. When he came to his senses, he realized there were no bad guys here at all. It was just a film crew shooting, and he had disrupted it. The total damage and incidental costs amounted to over 40,000. This number made him dizzy. The actress was checking her phone for delivery updates when she discovered that her delivery person was the troublemaker now stuck here. Yinfen also realized the problem. The package he was supposed to deliver had been lying on the ground for some time. Yinfen had resigned himself to receiving a 1-star rating, but the other party didn't do that. Actress Mo Qin just picked it up and ate it as if nothing had happened, and was even kind enough to invite him to eat together. A strong wind suddenly rose, and a time rift appeared again. Yinfen, no longer caring about what was behind him, rushed to the scene, unaware that there were eyes watching him unceasingly. The ground shook violently, and in the time rift, everything was dyed a blood-red color. Yinfen swung his sword, intending to use the sweeping army technique to teach the monster a lesson. But it had already figured him out. After a breath that smelled like 10 liters of fish sauce fermented in its mouth. When Yinfen wasn't paying attention, it struck him from behind. He was about to charge forward with his technique again when the monster used its power to trap him tightly. Unable to move, Kiri hid behind a tree, not afraid but even very happy because the seal was about to be restored. While it was still celebrating inwardly, a beam of light brushed past. Bone Spirit had appeared spectacularly to rescue the handsome man trapped in the hands of the lower creature. It looked just like the opening of those familiar romantic dramas, but with reverse genders. The entire fighting process of hers was recorded and live-streamed by another heavenly mandated person hiding in the bushes. Everyone admired her fighting ability. However, this wind demon was truly extraordinary. Although it had been beaten until even the viewers were dizzy, it still seemed unaffected. This monster had a specific name, Yaksha, rated as 5 stars, which explained why it was so difficult to defeat. Yinfen saw that he was clearly the chosen one yet allowed someone to fight to protect him, which was embarrassing. He broke free from the rocks holding him down and used the sweeping army technique to slash at the Yaksha. He thought he had defeated it and looked proudly at Bone Spirit to show off. Heaven would often reward those who boast early, like Yinfen, with events that overturn expectations. The Yaksha had not yet logged out. It jumped up to attack him, and it was still the quick-witted Bone Spirit who reacted in time to save half his life again. But an event beyond control occurred. Yinfen's sword controlled itself and stabbed straight at Bone Spirit, causing her to fall from her spell-casting position in mid-air. The entire sword glowed with the power of green light. Bone Spirit now had to fight the Yaksha while dodging Yinfen's attacks. She was forced to bind him until she resolved the matter. After continuously casting spells, the Yaksha finally disappeared along with the time rift. Everything returned to its original form, and Bone Spirit shed her disguise, revealing her true identity as actress Mo Qin. Yinfen went to Lu Hang to talk, and he impatiently threw his comic book onto the table. Lu Hang said, first, he was not the team leader, and second, the drawings were too ugly, who knew what monkey business they were. But these words didn't register with Yinfen at all. He was recalling the moment he realized Mo Qin was Bone Spirit. Yinfen continued to be inconsiderate, asking her to be his combat assistant. Mo Qin impatiently flicked him, saying she didn't like dogs. Such damaging words, yet Yinfen didn't understand at all, and went to Lu Hang to ask for advice on understanding girls' thoughts. You're so good. Surely you have many women around you, he said with the appearance of a puppy wagging its tail, begging its master, which Lu Hang couldn't refuse. Attracting girls required skill. The most important things were courage and thick skin. The first thing he needed to do was to know himself and know others. Obediently, Yinfen went to learn Mo Qin's schedule, then appeared at the film set following her like a crazy fan with an idol. Then, using sincerity to move her, he gave her flowers as instructed by Lu Hang, resulting in being dragged out by security and seen as a fool. But with Master Lu Hang's guidance, Yinfen was far from letting things rest. He said the more failures you have, the more you keep going. Not giving up when facing difficulties, that's how you reap sweet fruits. From then on, Yinfen attacked her with flowers every day. One day, he spotted her on a scooter and chased her to an orphanage. He saw Mo Qin playing with the children. The scene reminded him of his past with his father. The children wanted to hear Mo Qin sing, and she indulgently raised her voice to sing for them. The moment her singing voice rang out, everyone immediately regretted it. It was more unpleasant than the alarm clock at 6:30 on a Sunday morning. Neighbors passing by gossiped about Mo Qin. Through this, he learned that she had grown up in an orphanage and, despite being adopted years ago, still returned to help countless children. At this most vulnerable moment, Yinfen chatted for a while, and then invited her to be his partner, to become his assistant, and fight wind demons together. He was the one who had gathered enough luck and strength. Mo Qin was deafened and had a headache. She was just short of giving this guy a kick. A child ran over to tell her that another child had just fallen. Seeing this, Yinfen immediately helped take the boy to the infirmary, not noticing that behind him, the door slammed straight into Mo Qin's nose. Not stopping there, he volunteered to hold Mo Kin's tools while she was hammering, but somehow managed to make her hammer hit his hand directly. Indeed, one should stay away from this guy. He didn't give up, following her with his electric bicycle. When Mo Kin stopped, intending to have a proper conversation, Yinfen lost his brakes and crashed straight into her. Her beloved scooter had parts scattered in every corner, while Yinfen was taken to the hospital. At least during the recovery period, Mo Kin wouldn't be bothered. The scene shifts to another location, where a young boy is sipping a drink and deciding to teach Yinfen a lesson. That night at the Central Nervous Hospital, in his misfortune, he was accidentally splashed with water by a passing car and then received a phone call informing him that he had exceeded the deadline for paying his fine. The 200 yuan fine that he had been penalized by the officials not long ago for breaking the law. Now Yinfen was shouldering an enormous debt, from the cost of repairing Mo Kin's scooter to compensation for the film crew. All huge numbers. Thinking he could rely on his soon-to-be-published comic to pay off the debt, the scriptwriter called to say that his work had been taken down for plagiarism. Impossible, it was all written by himself. At this moment, a time rift appeared. Yinfen was caught between two choices: either be an excellent comic author, doing useful work every day, or save the world. In the end, he chose the latter. There was another yaksha attacking the noodle shop owner from before, because he too was chosen by heaven. Yinfen told the opponent to run quickly. The tiger was about to listen, but then changed his mind and stayed. The yaksha flung Yinfen away, causing him to hit his head on the tiger's shelter, then continued attacking. He dodged the attack skillfully and even cut off the yaksha's arm. At the moment he was about to finish it with one strike, the monster blocked his sword with just its remaining hand. Yinfen had to call for help from the tiger hiding behind the truck. Finally, it agreed to stand up and fight, but the yaksha's entire body was rock hard. One punch went straight to the core. Both of them were thrown back, and the monster's severed arm instantly healed. Yinfen attacked again. He switched to the soul destruction technique, causing the yaksha to split into many pieces. The monster didn't die. It regenerated and even grew twice as large as before. According to Lu Hang, its true form was just an illusion. Killing it any number of times would be useless. Fighting alone was never a smart plan. It turned out that Yinfen's house had been bought outright by him, leaving no escape. Butler Meng wanted the other party to come and beg the young master for help on their own. Lu Hang somewhat disagreed with this forced approach, but before he could speak, his phone notified him of Yinfen's battle with the yaksha. Mo Kin also didn't sit idle. She immediately drove her vehicle to provide support. The situation was urgent. They would run first and figure things out later. Yinfen moved nimbly, dodging attacks spectacularly, keeping his meager life. But he couldn't be called safe as the yaksha was pursuing him relentlessly. Yinfen was hit with an old trick, being sealed under the ground waiting to die. A super huge boulder hurtled toward him at a dizzying speed. Neither Lu Hang nor Mo Kin could react in time. Just when they thought it was all over, Yinfen miraculously rose from the rubble. Having abandoned his manuscript to come here, Yinfen was determined not to let everything be in vain. If it wouldn't die no matter how they fought, then he would turn it to ash. With just one slash, he made Lu Hang stare in surprise. The yaksha had turned into smoke and vanished. Bone Spirit didn't linger, leaving immediately afterward. Yinfen ran home at demon speed and found Kiri sitting at his computer. Fortunately, the house was still intact, with nothing lost. The landlord called again, but instead of scolding him, he said someone had paid the rent for him. Then the scriptwriter also reported that the plagiarism issue was just a misunderstanding. Yinfen returned to life as if nothing had happened. The latest rankings of the 4 regions were sent to his machine under the pretext of paying the fine. Bone Spirit ranked 10th, and a newcomer like him was surprisingly in 49th place. The yaksha that even Bone Spirit couldn't eliminate had been thoroughly defeated by him. In the chat group, only Tigerhead stood up for him when everyone else said Yinfen was just lucky. As for Lu Hang, he seemed to have developed a different view of Yinfen. That somewhat brave fighting style was indeed impressive. Lu Hang said, "Old butler, don't interfere in my affairs anymore. I have paid his rent. He can continue to stay in the house. The spirit core of the 5-star yaksha is enough for him to pay the fine." As for the plagiarism and eviction issues, Lu Hang had already stepped in to handle them. But Old Meng had something to clarify. The moving company wasn't hired by him. Indeed, it wasn't him but the kid living in a high-rise building not far from the Mingxian relic site, who had also repaired Yinfen's sword and opened the spatial rift. He threw a smoke bomb into Yinfen's house, causing both him and Kiri to lose consciousness, then sneaked in. The next morning, Yinfen and Kiri heartily enjoyed the pastries sent by Tigerhead. This uncle might look tough, but he had the soul of a young girl. Yinfen entered the three realms, ignoring the scrutinizing eyes of the people as he chatted warmly with Tiger Head. The uncle said he also had a little one like Kiri named Ting Lam. Their conversation was interrupted by rude gossip. Someone said Tiger Head was a follower, but the uncle just stayed silent without retorting. Yinfen wasn't going to sit idle. He stood up to defend his good friend, scaring the bad guys away. Speaking of which, a few days earlier during the live broadcast, Tiger Head had noticed that his sword was a bit strange, possibly possessed by a monster, and advised Yinfen to be more careful. Recently, he had been messaging with a little girl who was a fan of his comic. Although she had refused his invitations to meet several times, Yinfen still found this person very interesting. His comic had reached the milestone of 10,000 views. He brought this good news to Tiger Head, inviting him for a meal, but then heard the urgent news that Ting Lam had disappeared. He hurriedly went to search and accidentally bumped into a little girl. Yinfen saw a somewhat familiar figure and thought it was Tiger Head transformed. But why did the baobao that looked like Kiri, which the uncle mentioned, turn out to be a dog? Someone called from behind, and it was then that he realized this small, cute girl who looked like a Lolita was actually Tiger Head in transformed state. All along, it turned out that Tiger Head Monster had been using a voice changer because in the form of a big tiger, using a gentle voice like a young girl had caused Tiger Head to be ostracized. The people called her the effeminate uncle. As for Ting Lam, it had gotten lost nearby. Tiger Head, also known as Muia, had found it at the explosion site of the archaeological relic at Mingshan University. What a coincidence, Kiri also originated from there. Suddenly, they heard sounds like an earthquake. Muia said, "It's coming from the Great Crane Tower, that building far away over there." Supposedly, the Great Crane had been suppressing demons since tens of thousands of years ago, occasionally making roaring sounds like that. But in reality, the terrifying sound was just wind blowing through the tower. But this time it was a bit strange. The screaming was piercing and somewhat eerie. Suddenly, the tower exploded, a strong wind covered the entrance, and a strange black gas appeared. It was then that he realized his sword had vanished without a trace. Yinfen grabbed Muia's hand and ran. When he got hold of his sword, he immediately asked Kiri to protect her while he fought alone. But something wasn't right. His entire body felt heavy, and he was thrown away by the monster. Fearing she would be harmed, he still decided to push Muia aside and take the hit himself. As he fell, he was still mumbling for her to run quickly, unable to bear it anymore. Yinfen was her first friend. She wouldn't allow anyone to hurt him. Finally, Tiger Head's power was unleashed. The tiger showed the monster what absolute power was. With just a few basic sword moves, she successfully defeated the opponent. Ting Lam ran out from the bushes at this moment. Lu Hang was facing the kid who was the root of all these problems, who turned out to be the second young master of the Lu family. Yinfen's sword was a new parasitic entity from the ancient green light sword. The black shadow was some kind of creature that had been corroded by the green light and thus mutated, so the entire chaos was caused by the ancient sword. Lu Hang listed the crimes of the boy, and of course, he denied them. Unauthorized taking of others' weapons for experiments. Punishment by confinement was too lenient. Yinfen woke up from a nightmare, nearly jumping out the window. Fortunately, Muia rammed the door in time, though there was no need to be so dramatic since it was only the first floor. He was taken to Mingshan's internal medicine hospital because of brain damage. Wasn't this Dr. Nana, the one who usually ordered takeout and then screamed at home? Since they were all acquaintances, take off this beeping wire, it looked weird. Nana refused. Your injury is more serious than you think, with hallucinations and suicidal tendencies. Should I release you so you can jump again? Yinfen had no desire to die. There must be some misunderstanding. Muia answered the doctor for him. That morning when she went into his room to clean, she had accidentally seen his search history, which was full of painless ways to die. There were also confusion-inducing drugs that altered the way nerves transmitted signals. Taking too much would cause slowness, with side effects of excessive sleep and rapid heartbeat. If it triggered during combat, the body would lose its life. How strange, in this new era, there were still people who believed that soulless puppets could kill. Yinfen might not have known about these things, but Kiri had them in the palm of its hand because it was the culprit behind everything. Nana knew about his comic and even knew he was looking for teammates, so she offered to collaborate, but he wanted his partners to be really strong. Daring to look down on Nana, she asked Muia to watch over this mentally unstable guy and then left. A health report for someone named Tego was sent. He was 20 years old, but had the health of an 80-year-old. It was hard to believe. If discharged now, he would probably only last a month at most. Muia thought it was Yinfen's report and interpreted it as him wanting to end his life because of this. Tears welled up, and she wanted to cry. She turned back to ask if he had any last wishes he wanted to fulfill. Later, Muya contacted Bone's spirit to help persuade her to join the team. But Mokin wasn't so easy to trust, directly deleting the message. On Yinfan's last day in the hospital, Muya bowed her head and begged Lu Heng to indulge him a little. Then they held a party at his house. Yinfan ate until his stomach was full. Much later, Mokin arrived on her super cool motorcycle at the gate. Only then did Muya know who Bone's spirit was. So the team had gathered in full, and they toasted together. Actually, Yinfan assumed this, while the other two were still quite reluctant. Nana wanted to join but had to go through a month's trial. That was acceptable too. Then she fell asleep on the sofa, ignoring the world. Mokin, uninterested in the boring party, stood up to leave. She wasn't his teammate. It was Muya who had said someone was about to die from exhaustion due to fighting demons, with not more than a month to live, which was why she had come. Yinfan couldn't believe his ears, but the atmosphere made him think it was true. The only person who knew the truth was sleeping like the dead, so this misunderstanding couldn't be resolved. Yinfan bowed his head, took Kiri, and left. Only the person involved could know the truth. Nana was splashed with alcohol to wake her up. Yinfan sat in his room, initially ready to accept his fate, but couldn't help but burst into tears. He would give Kiri to Muya. He wouldn't leave it homeless. It was just a pity that his comic wasn't famous enough before his short life came to an end. Kiri woke up, knowing he was about to leave, and couldn't help but laugh out loud. It had finally waited for this day. Seeing Kiri wobbling, Yinfan thought the little one was drunk. Not at all, Kiri said. If it weren't for the loosening of the Supreme Imperial Formation needing urgent repair, with its divine power damaged, how could it have shouldered the burden of a fool like him? Poor aptitude, truly a disgrace to the heavenly mandated. Kiri was still resentful, cursing the waste Yinfan to obediently sacrifice himself to repair the formation in the time rift. That would be his greatest contribution to this world. But he had insisted on resisting. Trample Lu attracted wind demons, yet still couldn't take Yinfan away. And then both the Dragon Prince and Bone Spirit came to help him. However, once it and Kiru activated the Guardian Divine Power, they could stabilize the Supreme Imperial Formation. And then Yinfan's affairs would have nothing to do with it anymore. Only now did he realize that all the dangers before had been due to someone he thought was close, but was distant, thought was distant but was right in front of him. Even the 5-dragon pill had been given to him by Kiri. Given that they had lived together for some time, Kiri also told the truth. There was no chosen one by heaven. It was all a lie to fool idiots like him. Who told Yinfan to be so naive? He was both sad and angry, his face as black as the bottom of a pot. He took a cup of water and splashed it on Kiri's head, asking what he had done to make it so dissatisfied. Hadn't he treated it well enough? Eating his food, drinking his water, yet daring to do such an outrageous thing just wait. Indeed, Yinfan was true to his word. He didn't let it use the potted plant to relieve itself, so it had to use a plastic bag. How could Yinfan let it be? He pushed it into the pile of products it had created. Kiri, covered in waste, was halfway through bathing when Yinfan shut off the water. When night fell, just as Kiri was about to cover itself with a blanket to sleep, Yinfan put a horn to its ear and blew. Wherever it hid, Yinfan could find it. Almost 12 o'clock, and he absolutely wouldn't let it sleep. Until 3 in the morning, he not only kept Kiri awake, but woke up the entire area. The next morning, Lu Heng, with dark circles under his eyes and an unfocused appearance, stumbled into his car. If he found out which heartless fool had disturbed the entire night, he guaranteed he would send him to meet his maker early. Muya came to talk to Yinfan. She had heard the truth yesterday. He wasn't going to die, but his aptitude was extremely poor. In combat, he couldn't exert his abilities, though the cause hadn't been found. But not dying was good enough. Perhaps the root cause was something strange attached to him that hadn't been detected. Could it be due to that blue light? Lu Heng and Mokin pondered as if they had figured out the problem. Opening the door, Muya immediately saw Yinfan, soul in chaos, vigorously tormenting Kiri. She didn't expect him to be so depressed and told him everything. When Yinfan learned he was fine, he laughed out loud. But he still wouldn't forgive Kiri, determined not to let it touch a piece of cake. Muya was a bit surprised because clearly yesterday she had told him that it was all a misunderstanding. But Yinfan had covered his ears and told her to leave, so she thought he had heard. Yinfan thanked her for telling him the truth. Actually, Muya had a favor to ask. She hoped he could take care of Ting Lam for a few days. After her assessment exam was over, she would come back for it. Nothing difficult, he could be trusted. While he wasn't paying attention, Kiri finally managed to eat the cake it had been craving. It seemed that Ting Lam and Kiri knew each other. After 500 years without meeting, Ting Lam didn't remember anything anymore. When it was touched by Kiri and dropped its cake, Ting Lam got so angry that it kicked the little one flying. Fortunately, Ting Lam's inner divine power was still there and usable, although the little one's mind was a bit scattered. Kiri despaired at how heaven kept sending it fools as burdens. How on earth could it repair the formation now? Yinfen resolutely threw Kiri out. He could save the world on his own. A traitorous backstabber had no value in being kept. Kiri couldn't believe its eyes and knocked on the door, hoping he would change his mind. Yinfen didn't feel happy about driving Kiri away either. He sat by the door, barely having time to feel sad before Kiri jumped in through the window. If anyone should be driven away, it should be Yinfen, not it. Then came a fierce retaliation. Yinfen's back was trampled by Ting Lam and Kiri for half a day. Now Yinfen had two choices. Either restore the Supreme Imperial Formation, help Ting Lam regain its memory and return to being Kiru, or reincarnate in another life. Scaring children, Yinfen didn't like these silly jokes. Now, from his position, Kiri also had only two choices. Either get out or reveal everything it knew. This guy's sudden intelligence was a bit scary. Yinfen picked up the horn, intending to blow it, reminding it of the sleepless nights to let it know who was in charge. Kiri was scared and agreed to talk. The legends related to the three realms were indeed true. In ancient times, the great demons were sealed by 5 great powers using the Heaven and Earth Great Formation, the Supreme Imperial Formation. To prevent someone from activating the formation to release the great demons, the activation key to the infinite formation, the golden lotus of the mortal realm, was destroyed by the combined efforts of the great powers and hidden where the formation I was. It and Kiru, now Ting Lam, guarded the Supreme Imperial Formation. Although the Great Formation occasionally became unstable due to the energy of heaven and earth, it was all within a repairable range. However, over nearly 1 million years, fragments of the key gradually formed. Until 500 years ago, a mysterious organization gathered enough key fragments. On Lu Hang's side, he was also caught in troubles hard to explain in a few words. Lu Hang's grandfather had ordered construction at the relic site. When Lu Hang called to question him, he spoke about what happened 500 years ago. A cult organization called White Phantom Spirit operating near the ancient city of Jianan. Not long after, the ancient city disappeared in just one night, and members Ioyu seemed to have all died. This relic was the disappeared ancient city of Jianan. Now that they had recovered, his family had to quickly investigate the truth to prevent the tragedy from repeating. Continuing Kiri's story, it had guarded the Supreme Imperial Formation with Kiru, striving to stop the Phantom Spirit, but the price paid was also very painful. The explosion near Mingshan University was partly their doing. The sword lit up, suddenly jerking violently. Yinfen had to chase after it to hold it, resulting in him falling from mid-air to the ground, unconscious. Kiri recalled the days they spent together, and decided not to take advantage of the situation. The matter of killing Yinfen could be dealt with slowly. It checked his Destiny Jade. Strangely, it had been sealed. The next day, Yinfen had to check his Destiny Jade quality again. He needed to prove to the world that he was indeed heaven's favored and beloved. A dazzling light appeared with the words, Destiny Jade level, truly infinite talent, the bane of wind demons, the light of the southern Jambudvipur realm. After the delusion ended, it was time to return to reality. Kiri cursed silently in its throat, truly terrible at everything, only good at daydreaming. Yinfen optimistically asked Kiri in return, had it ever seen any heavenly mandated person who was sealed like this? Had it ever seen any divine sword that could call the wind and summon the rain? Even Kiri was guided by heaven to him. Although the sword was occasionally a bit crazy and insane, it had also helped him escape danger at crucial moments. If Kiri agreed to unseal him, Yinfen promised to forget its past mistakes. Unsealing wasn't possible, but the seal had already started to loosen. He just needed to fight and break through more. For now, he would have to draw these events and put them into the story. Lu Hang was still talking with his grandfather. He didn't know if the ancient sword excavated from the relic site had anything to do with the great battle 500 years ago. His grandfather replied that there was no record in the books, but an ancient sword buried for too long developing some sentience was normal. If it was willing to borrow Trample Lu's power to cultivate, then let it be. It was up to him to decide, but he must be careful. It was just that the White Phantom Spirit had emerged from the ground, and there might be chaos soon. Today's weather forecast, the South Ocean had abnormally strong winds, about to form the strongest ocean storm. According to reports, the storm winds were heading north, along the coastal city of Namuan. The one causing such things could only be the White Phantom Spirit. Ting Lam opened the door to feel the breeze and was almost pulled outside. Yinfen had to abandon his task of watching over these two. Suddenly, he heard a television interview with Leek, a comic artist he greatly admired. So he ignored the two little ones, slammed the door shut to prevent them from flying out, and sat down to watch TV. He never in 1,000 years expected that the work written by Yinfen would be used by Leak on television as an example of comics with development potential. Yinfen was so happy he danced, and his phone rang. It was Kaisa Company contacting him, wanting to adapt his comic. Before they finished speaking, he had already hurriedly taken his bike out, wanting to discuss this matter in person. Despite the library warning that a Category 9 typhoon was approaching and residents were advised not to go out, suddenly, Yinfen saw a man collapsed by the roadside, still breathing, with no visible external injuries. He then looked into a small alley and was utterly surprised to find that it was all caused by Mo Qin. Ignoring his chatter, she focused on her work. News reported unstable energy near the orphanage in Mingxian City, requiring heavenly mandated individuals to check immediately. Mo Qin got on her vehicle, leaving Yinfen to handle things behind her while she went to the orphanage on her mission. Suddenly, the people who had been knocked out on the ground all stood up simultaneously, looking like sleepwalking collectively. While Yinfen didn't know what to do, as the rules forbade harming ordinary people, a series of vines wrapped around them. Behind him appeared a person who called himself Celestial Demon. Thanks to the help of the Liu family, specifically Liu Hang's grandfather, everything was resolved. Of course, the root cause of everything was the time rift causing wind demons to release their power. But now everything was temporarily stable. Artist manager Lane didn't expect him to be so reckless, braving the storm to get there immediately. Getting straight to the point, copyright fee of 600,000, term of 10 years, read it and sign, no need to hesitate. Yinfen signed without hesitation, not because he was blinded by the 600,000, but because he trusted Mo Qin's manager, so he didn't bother reading what the contract said. Lane said the plot still had some prominent points that needed to be explored. For example, what was the seal in the protagonist's body? Why was it there? When would it be resolved? He hadn't thought about these things yet. Lane then offered a few scenarios. For instance, 20 years ago, during a snowfall, a boy accidentally obtained a treasure that affected the fate of the world. But a righteous-looking character stole it and sealed the boy so that the child would no longer remember anything about the past. Having said all that, this fool still didn't realize the issue. He asked a series of questions in return, and then said he couldn't rely on this script before leaving. He happily stood dancing in the middle of the road and accidentally encountered Mo Qin coming over. Both of their phones rang simultaneously with a notification. Energy in the Halon area was fluctuating violently, and a time rift was about to occur. Nearby heavenly mandated individuals were requested to investigate. Mo Qin had no choice but reluctantly took him along to scout the situation. At the location predicted by Celestial Demon, the wind had calmed, but the barrier was thick. A group of white-eyed people emerged from behind the rocks and attacked fiercely. Yinfen, being unskilled, was pinned down and choked, forcing Mo Qin to transform and use her power to attack in order to save him. Yinfen was still clapping in admiration when he looked up and caught the kitten-like eyes fixed on him. Liu Hang might arrive late but was never absent. He had successfully saved him for who knows how many times. The wind demon daring to break through the time rift to the mortal realm was indeed not simple. Liu Hang proposed discussing a battle plan, but Mo Qin just charged forward. Not knowing until engaging in battle, they only then realized how frightening it was. 3 magical treasures combined looked extremely impressive as they struck the wind demon, yet it remained completely unharmed. This wind demon might be of the persistent type, having torn space to come down here, probably already having withstood such power 10 times before. With just one roar, the residents had their consciousness seized and continuously attacked the 3 of them. At this rate, innocent people would be dragged in, and they would die from exhaustion. They needed to notify Kaisa, but there was no signal here. Yinfen told him to go and inform Kaisa about the wind demon here. He and Mo Qin would handle it. The sword lost control again, but was intercepted by the wind demon before it could act. Mo Qin used her power to surround the enemy and then set it on fire. The wind demon was stronger than she thought. It absorbed all the fire into its hand and directly attacked. Mo Qin couldn't react in time and froze. Yinfen pushed her out of danger and took the attack himself. Liu Hang had returned, not because he left and came back, but because he basically couldn't get out. Escaping the barrier would just return him to the same place, like a loop. It seemed there was no other way but to fight to the death. On Kaisa's side, they discovered that the entire Halon area was covered by a special magnetic field, possibly caused by that nameless wind demon. The situation was very unusual. The monster's body was large yet so agile that Bone's spirit was hit many times without being able to react. Even 2 against 1, they couldn't find any weakness. Mo Qin fainted afterward, and Liu Hang also had no strength left to resist. Only Yinfen remained. He finally erupted with heaven-given potential, breaking the seal and confronting the wind demon directly. After swinging his sword for a while, he was once again caught firmly in the monster's hand. He didn't give up. He had to show it why Yinfen was the protagonist, the chosen one, not some nameless wind demon. He used his internal power, causing the monster to panic and let go. They fought back and forth until even Mokin was moved. A heavenly mandated person must never give up. She got up from her unconsciousness to cooperate with him. Lu Hang gripped his weapon tightly. They were all truly crazy. Finally, they discovered the wind demon's weakness on its stomach. Bone Spirit would lure it for him to strike. However, this was never easy. The monster, having its weakness discovered, became even more cautious. Just as it was about to attack, a wave of power enveloped everyone, knocking the wind demon away. This voice belonged to Dr. Nana. The situation now was 1 against 4. If they still lost this match, they truly wouldn't know where to hide their faces. 3 people used shining chains to bind the monster for Yinfen to attack. After all that, they finally achieved victory. Seeing the spirit core floating in the sky, Yinfen finally felt at ease and fainted. The next day, Yinfen woke up with a start, feeling an unusual pain in his buttocks. Pulling down his pants to check, he discovered a seal that had perfectly grown in the middle of his buttocks. This scene was just seen by Mokin, who left without a word. Lu Hang didn't escape the disaster either, seeing him with his pants down, pointing his buttocks at Kiri. Elder Lu was thinking about informing the heavenly mandated ones that the legend was true, but feared causing panic, giving White Phantom Spirit a chance to attack. Another person entered the room, directly changing the subject. He showed an image of Yinfen. Since he became a heavenly mandated person, the White Phantom Spirit had become active again. How could this just be a coincidence? He also revealed a secret. Yinfen's father was once a spy for the White Phantom Spirit. Yinfen was still wondering why Dr. Nana wasn't listed in the Wind Demon slaying roster when a serious-looking person walked in from outside. He was reluctantly brought to court for trial. Yinfen thought it would be like last time, saying a few words and then leisurely returning. But he was detained by the man. He was forced to confess and reveal how he colluded with Yinlo, his biological father, to contact the Phantom Spirit. This was the first time he had heard about this. How could he confess to something he knew nothing about? The incident had happened 20 years ago, an energy fluctuation event on the snowy mountains in the Kolo region. The key fragments were being gathered by a team setting out, but unfortunately, the plane had an accident. All the heavenly mandated individuals of Kolo sacrificed themselves. More than half of the ordinary people died, and the key fragments disappeared without a trace. The only clue was the item in Kolo's hand, and Yinlo, Yinfen's father, nicknamed the War God, had killed Kolo and stolen the key. Yinfen couldn't believe what he was hearing. He tried to deny it, resulting only in painful electric shocks. Tao Ling suspected Yinfen, nicknamed the Sword Knight, of collaborating with the White Phantom Spirit to bring wind demons to the mortal realm. Not only him, but Lu Hang was also in a dilemma. Actually, his grandfather had known about his identity for a long time, which was why he let him approach Yinfen. He didn't allow him to get involved to ensure the family's safety. Meanwhile, Bone Spirit had managed to infiltrate the place where Yinfen was being forced to confess. If he didn't confess, he would be shocked. The screams echoing throughout the room reached the ears of Mo Qin, Kiri, and Ting Lam. She took advantage of the man's moment of carelessness to ambush him. Ting Lam was no slouch either, rushing to attack continuously, forcing the man to admit defeat. You all have the courage of the sky, daring to come here and snatch the prisoner. Mo Qin bound him, helping Yinfen leave. But those strings couldn't hold him for long. After breaking free, he continued to attack. Nana appeared, for the second time rescuing Yinfen from a dangerous situation. The law clearly stated that after the interrogation time, the person must be released. Torture was not allowed. The man, seeing that Nana intended to help the suspect, attacked her, causing her mask to break. It turned out she was also arranged by Kaisa to approach him. Bone Spirit had to quickly take Yinfen away first. Halfway, those people came chasing after them. She desperately threw him out first, then ran back in herself to deal with the situation. Yinfen fell onto the road, face down, remembering what that man had said. At this time, people gathered around, throwing eggs at him because they also believed he was a traitor. He could only lie still and endure it. Several hours had passed, and Yinfen still sat by the window, not eating, not drinking, not moving. Kiri, fearing he would be traumatized and abandon the mission, had to find a way to comfort him. But this kid's clumsy words felt like punches to the face with every utterance. Yinfen continued to maintain his soulless state. Kiri looked at the notification from the officials. The results of the investigation into whether he was a spy for the White Phantom Spirit would be available in 3 days, and people were requested not to spread rumors that would disturb the peace. That might have been said, but the chat group had already exploded, with everyone demanding Yinfan's permanent expulsion. The unease didn't just gnaw at his heart. Even his teammates couldn't sit still. Mo Qin looked at the paper flower that Yinfen had meticulously folded and placed on the table, deceiving herself with a smile as if nothing had happened. But the fact that she had stayed up all night betrayed all her efforts to cover up. She just wasn't heartless enough. Lu Hang didn't believe that someone willing to risk his life like him was a traitor and couldn't sit still anymore, ready to disobey his grandfather to find him. Yinfen was Lu Hang's friend. If he couldn't even protect him, was he worthy of the name of a heavenly mandated child who never backed down? That same day, Kiri and Ting Lam were both horrified to discover that he had disappeared without a trace. They searched the entire house but couldn't find him. On the table was a letter. He said he didn't blame Dr. Nana. Perhaps she was just forced. The food in the cabinet was enough for 2 months. If they wanted something delicious, they should find Lu Hang. He was very happy to have been teammates with everyone, only regretted not receiving Mo Qin's recognition. At this time, she was in the southern Jambudvipur realm, trying to restore his reputation. Without proper evidence, they shouldn't arbitrarily accuse him. Had anyone seen how a sword knight risked his life when confronting wind demons? Had they seen him break through? She didn't have evidence to affirm his innocence either, but she trusted him absolutely. Mo Qin removed her mask, revealing her identity as a screen actress to prove her credibility. As for Yinfen, he was fighting with people from the White Phantom Spirit. Kaisa's people were also present, but were already sprawled on the ground. When the box fell into the water, Yinfen had ignored everything to run after it and pick it up. Lu Hang and Kiri arrived, thinking he was attempting suicide, but in reality, Yinfen was just retrieving an item. The image from the box appeared, revealing the North Kondo area and a location where the events from 20 years ago had occurred. Following this lead might help find clues. This task was entrusted to Dr. Nana, who absolutely had to find clues before the White Phantom Spirit. As for Lu Hang, his grandfather said this wasn't something he could handle and sent him away. He knew Lu Hang wouldn't give up. A young eagle learning to fly would either get a broken head or grow tired of trying. Kaisa's people who had encountered the Phantom Spirit earlier were fortunately unharmed. Nana didn't miss the opportunity to speak up for Yinfen. The person from that day was saved by Yinfen. With his Iki, he didn't have the capacity to be a spy. There was also another matter. When the wind demon incident occurred, Nana had detected that the power when the storm formed exceeded predictions, meaning there was a stronger wind demon looking for an opportunity to come to the mortal realm. Nana said they needed power like the Sword Knights to eliminate it cleanly. If he showed any suspicious behavior, she would personally bind him and bring him back to face charges. Old Lu wasn't difficult. Perhaps he trusted the boy somewhat, and he trusted Nana's words even more, so he quickly agreed. At this time, Yinfen was still fumbling around on the snowy mountain, looking for evidence to clear his father's name and his own. He had strong faith in his luck that he wouldn't lose his life here, so he just walked casually. After half a day, he finally saw the location marked on the map, although the distance presented some obstacles. While standing there lost in thought, the snow beneath his feet began to collapse. Yinfen tried to run but couldn't make it in time. In the critical moment, it was still the formidable Lu Hang. He used water to help him land, and he ended up right in Mo Qin's arms. Everyone was present. Nana explained that 20 years ago, her sister had also been a Kaisa member and had died in the Snow Mountain incident. She had approached him to investigate the truth. As for Mo Qin, she had said she didn't want to form a team, but with him, it was different. Yinfen was deaf and didn't listen, so he made his own assumptions. Normal people had Destiny Jade for protection, but he had been sealed, so now he was freezing cold. After saying this, she realized she had misspoken and quickly covered her mouth. They couldn't see anything now. When they got home, Nana would examine him. Speaking of which, Muiya's archaeological site was also nearby. She told everyone about what she had found in the recent excavation, a human-shaped skeleton that had a wind demon jade. Hearing this, everyone was startled. This place was dangerous, and they couldn't stay long. The mountain suddenly shook. As they moved to avoid it, they discovered the wreckage of a plane. Fragments of Yinfen's stolen memories began to return bit by bit. The person from the Phantom Spirit faction whom Yinfen had attacked to get the box suddenly appeared. Now they were all surrounded. The leader, dressed differently from everyone else, waved his hand to dismiss them. He said he only needed Yinfen Lin. He seemed both strange and familiar. It was none other than Mo Qin's manager, Lane. All were heavenly mandated, but this one harbored evil intentions because Lane was not content with having an exceptional identity yet having to protect ordinary people. Kaisa, after all, wasn't that great. Lane's implication was that the one behind the proliferation of wind demons was Kaisa itself. Lu Hang couldn't listen anymore and directly attacked. Lane ordered his men to capture Yinfen, not caring whether the others lived or died. Lane's abilities weren't absolute. Facing Bone's spirit, he still suffered a miserable defeat. She questioned why he had approached her. Lane, half jokingly and half seriously, replied that he wanted to see how far an orphan's efforts could go. And if Mo Qin wasn't satisfied with that answer, she could try to guess. She immediately gave him a punch. Mo Qin had no intention of finishing off someone who had been her partner for 5 years, so she bound him to a rock. Lane smiled as if he had predicted the outcome. Basically, if it was just this much power, he wouldn't dare come even if it was his grandfather. But the problem was that he had prepared for this. A beam of light shot down from the sky, continuously targeting Yinfen with attacks. Kiri helped Yinfen dodge. What followed was a scene of a person and a divine beast hugging each other while running around the snowy mountain, with something unidentified chasing relentlessly behind. Mo Qin opened the celestial eye for everyone. Thanks to this, they could all clearly see that yellow thing. It was just a spear with a flag attached to it, wasn't it? Where did it get such terrifying power? Of course, it had assistance. The final boss finally deigned to descend from the rift. Yinfen's team planned to fight with the old strategy, everyone binding the enemy to hold it in place while Yinfen delivered the decisive blow. But using the strongest move right from the start was usually ineffective. Everyone was knocked back. The boss stood high above, looking down. These brats had killed all his wind demons without any remorse. The monster attacked, and although Yinfen could still block it and was physically unharmed, his strength had been depleted by more than half. A purple light emanated from him, surrounding the air and healing everyone. Even he didn't understand it. Yinfen thought it was emitted by the monster, but the opponent didn't bother to respond, instead proceeding to pick off each member of his team one by one. The frightening speed that they couldn't keep up with left the entire team seriously injured. He didn't even use magic, just appearing and disappearing to give each of them a punch. Finally, it was Yinfen's turn. He was thrown into the air, receiving a series of blows before falling freely into the wind demon boss's magic. Lu Hang's limbs were stiff, unable to cry out. Mo Qin could only watch helplessly. Muya couldn't come to the rescue and screamed in despair. In the critical moment, with life threatened in an instant, the rigid seal freezing the Destiny Jade began to show cracks. Yinfen was hit and fell to the ground. Mo Qin couldn't bear to endure the pain, standing up and walking toward the great General Nine Heads. He easily controlled her with a choke, lifting her up. Mo Qin had absolutely no chance to resist that powerful control and could only stand still and take it. He wanted to make them understand the feeling of watching their comrades fall without being able to do anything, to make everyone feel the pain of a father losing his child. At the crucial moment, Lane stood up to speak, saying revenge could be taken any time. But Nine Heads shouldn't forget the main mission. Although he was irritated at feeling ordered around, there was no other way. In the end, he reluctantly agreed to let go, allowing these brats to live a bit longer. A mark appeared in the sky, and Yinfen was lifted into the air and attacked. All the vitality in his body was drained. Lu Hang and Mo Qin were suppressed by the minions under the snow, powerless to resist. In his exhausted state, Yinfen remembered the image from that day, the scene after the plane crash, with fierce fires raging, the phantom spirit massacring people, and Yinlo leaving him behind to escape alone. Perhaps his father really was a spy. The key somehow fell out and aimed at him, then went straight into his body. So this was the real reason Yinfen was targeted and became prey. Sensing it was time, the power flow became even more violent and turned red. The key that had been sought for so long finally came into their hands. Ting Lam activated battle mode, breaking the flag and throwing it toward Kiri, calling the little one to wake up. Kiri saw the scene before it but wasn't happy at all. It ran to Nine Heads, wanting to use its power to destroy him, but of course it was no match. Kiri was firmly in one of Nine Heads' hands, unable to escape. The final key fragment finally escaped from Yinfen's body. Now came the moment of betrayal between the two villains. Even as allies, when faced with great profit, the stronger one would take all. Nine Heads, holding the key fragment, said he would keep it. Lane said this wasn't in line with their original agreement. Who cared about promises at this point? Just as Nine Heads was about to reveal some secret, Yinfen came back to life and attacked. He had some skill. Despite having his vitality drained, he still survived. Everyone on one side breathed a sigh of relief, having to thank them for removing that demonic thing from his body. Now Yinfen's body was full of power. His Destiny Jade had escaped that damn seal. Kiri happily jumped onto him. Yinfen hugged the little one, dancing around regardless of Nine Heads. After learning that Kiri was Yinfen's pet, he firmly demanded that he leave Kiri behind in exchange for sparing his life. That wasn't going to happen. Who knew if the old man would betray them? And besides, Yinfen had no intention of backing down. Yinfen demanded that he hand over the key, but his friends were still in the hands of those people. Kiri showcased its abilities. He directly threw Kiri through Lane's face, hitting the head of one of the Phantom Spirit members. Mo Qin seized the opportunity to stand up and regain the initiative. Everything was in place for battle. Nine Heads could also sense that his aura had grown stronger, truly extraordinary. If he hadn't been sealed, there was no way they could have oppressed him. But compared to a father who had lost his child, he still lacked some momentum. Out of respect for fellow pet owners, he would duel with him. Yinfen excellently blocked a very deadly strike, and both sides continued to rush at each other, tearing at each other. He didn't just think he would win, he was certain of victory. As for Lane, Mo Qin took care of his aftermath, giving the heartless man a beating. Muiya, since being saved by Yinfen, had shed her fragile shell and fought as well as anyone. When the little one was almost ambushed, Dr. Nana had also woken up and saved the day. Yinfen, however, wasn't in such a simple situation. He was hit several times and couldn't dodge. This time, the boss wouldn't spare him or anyone else. Nana, supported by everyone to sit up, created a large shield to save him. Her power was no joke. Even the big boss couldn't break through the shield she created using wind force. Nana also enhanced his strength, with power flowing inside him like a rushing spring. Yinfen was back, promising to be twice as powerful as 15 minutes ago. He would prove to the old man what it meant to be worthy of the title Chosen One. With just one enhancement, he managed to draw some blood from Nine Heads. The boss fell down and then got up again, putting all his effort into ending it in this next phase. However, what Yinfen never lacked most was support. His teammates all stood behind him, giving him courage. Nine Heads was standing in the middle, enduring a combo against the protagonist powered by the strength of friendship, a 5-against-1 joint attack, and the final episode of the show. He was quickly bound. By the time he broke free, it was too late to run. Yinfen held the key fragment in his hand, turning his head proudly. The 3-day deadline to announce Yinfen's identity had arrived, and the people were eager. Finally, Kaisa stepped forward, not to announce his identity, but to welcome the hero of all humanity back. At Mingxin University, Mo Qin stood by the lake, deep in thought. Fortunately, everyone's wounds were healing quickly. Yinfen came out to ask if she had found a new manager. That wasn't difficult, but the clues about his father had been broken. He wouldn't give up. He would definitely find out. How much information they could extract from Lane would depend on Kaisa. Muiya came to lead them to the archaeological site. Here, everyone continued to discover the strange skeleton. Wind demons had never left bodies after death. This skeleton looked identical to the one on the mountain, from the same individual, with a 99% compatibility rate with human bones. Just as Mo Qin reached out to touch it, she was pulled by a force into a deep hole behind. The open ending promises a dramatic second season revolving around Yinfen.